So whenever I tell people about the history of queer churches, they always assume I'm talking about New York City, San Francisco, maybe some other metropolitan area, probably on one of the two coasts. Because all queer people moved to the city, right? And queer people definitely didn't make it in small town America, right? And if they did, surely they were so oppressed that they couldn't possibly have organized until recently, right? Wrong. Hi, I'm William Stell. I'm a scholar of religion and sexuality, and I teach at NYU. In the 1970s and 80s, queer churches sprung up all over the United States, including in small cities and even in towns. And what's more, in some of these areas, these churches were the first LGBTQ organizations to exist. Here's a map of the metropolitan community churches in 1982, at the dawn of the AIDS epidemic. As mentioned in an earlier video, the MCC is a Christian denomination and 50 years ago was the largest LGBTQ organization in the country. See all that action in the middle here? In the early 80s, nearly 1/3 of MCC churches were in the South and nearly 20% were in the Midwest. And by the way, some of these Middle American churches predate the MCC's presence in urban coastal areas. Before there was an MCC church in New York City, there were MCC churches in Phoenix, Denver, Milwaukee, Dallas, New Orleans, Tampa, and Honolulu. And it gets even more fascinating because I've looked up population statistics for each of the 144 cities and towns where the MCC could be found in the early 80s. And what I found is that around 20% of MCC congregations in the early 80s existed in places where the population was under 100,000. For example, Abilene, Texas, Lawton, Oklahoma, Fort Smith, Arkansas, Waterloo, Iowa, and Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Another 17% were in areas with a population between 100,000 and 250,000. For example, Topeka, Kansas, Montgomery, Alabama, Dayton, Ohio, and Greenville, South Carolina. And then another 20% were in areas with a population between 250,000 and 500,000. For example, Knoxville, Tennessee, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Louisville, Kentucky, and Shreveport, Louisiana. What this means is that nearly 50 years ago, looking at one of the largest LGBTQ organizations from the period, we see more than half of its bodies, in this case MCC congregations, more than half of its bodies in areas where the population is under 500,000, and more than 1/3 of its bodies in areas where the population is under 250,000. So the moral of the story is simply, queer people make it in all kinds of places, honey, and they've been doing so for a really long time.